Space, the final frontier. Well, okay, not really. All right, take two. Here in the Mitten State, welcome to Code 47, bringing you all things Star Trek, spanning the quadrants, the best thing since the neutral zone.
All right, we are back with Code 47 on the Secret Friends Unite podcast network. This is episode 152. I am Charlie Carden, your Trek Lord here in West Michigan, your humble servant, joined by my number one, Mr. Peter Stein. Peter, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
And the man without whom there would be naught, my partner of 30 years, just like cops or whatever, police cops, Todd Oxtra's here. Todd, what's up?
Hey, everybody. Glad to be on, especially talking about one of my favorite Star Trek shows. I do have a question for the Illuminati. What is an appropriate Star Trek salute type of thing? Because I was going to do some things. I'm like, nope, none of those work. Is there an actual official... they don't do that to like officers. They don't salute. They don't do anything. Is there like reporting? Like when you report to a senior officer, you salute and.
I have a non-canonical answer that came from a DC comic, my favorite run, which is Volume 2 run from the 90s, where Kirk addresses an ensign who salutes him, and Kirk says, well, salutes are kind of considered passé in Starfleet. So I take that to mean that there is no such. Yes, the only salute is the Vulcan salute, which is not military related,
There's
obviously.
No.
We're not doing it. There's the sarcastic
Star Trek high five with the like you just do this. That's like your thing. High five.
Well, start writing letters and stuff to the people at Paramount, and we'll see if they pick up on any of your ideas. We'll see if that flies. But anyway, Todd is on to do a little wrap up of what has come before on Strange New Worlds. We're going to talk about season 1 and season 2, and then our overall hopes for season 3. And then Peter and I are going to talk about the kind of kitschy 1994 documentary wrap up of Star Trek: The Next Generation, hosted by our own Jonathan Frakes, called Journey's End in segment 2. But before we do that, we're going to talk a little bit about our Secret Friends Patreon squad, of which we do have a new member this week, which is exciting. We got someone, and then we're also going to give them their just desserts. But tuning into our Discords means exclusive shows, early programs, awesome Discord benefits, 7 days for free, 50% off your first month, and then as little as $2 a month moving forward, which is nuts. Lots of great entertainment for that money. These folks been taking advantage of it. My buddy Derek Trevelyan, the figure dude, Francie, who does my wife's hair, Xbox expansion pass, Mr. Luke Lore, he was just our guest on SFU last week, awesome guy, and my Uncle Tim down there in South Haven, Michigan. Also, John Sedorf, Brendan Myers, Corinne HD, Matthew Keel, Kurt Krug, my buddy, who hooks us up with all those great interviews, Tanya Lee, Chipotle Bear, famous Seamus, we're going to hear from him over on SFU with a comment he made on our episode this week, J Newport 007, Cam the Movie Man, and Brian Osterman, aka Darth Prozac. And I was wrong. We're going to circle back and handle him in our new Patreon. We'll get them next time. But our new Patreon's name is Freight, FR8 Conductor. Who welcome aboard. Glad to have you.
Trains do they go choo choo?
I think so. Or the bus. That's how you stop the bus. That's how you stop the train too. But circling back to Brian, he was he's the fifth member of our recent new crop of 5 that our super secret friend squad sponsors. Sean Stella and Henry Nice. They're in the Twin Cities. We love them very much. But we get to give Brian his Star Trek race and job. And Todd, as you were the one who pioneered this concept, I think you should go first.
Wow. Okay. So don't know much about Darth, like Brian himself, so his name doesn't give much away. Darth obviously seems Star Wars. But you know what? I'm going to, one of my favorite races in Star Trek, and I wish we had more of them, is the Andorians.
Yes,
love
agreed.
them to pieces. They're phenomenal. And I'm going to make him the actual, and I don't even know if this is a real job, but there's got to be like the official Star Trek menu creator within like the the duplicator or whatever you call it to make food.
Oh, the replicator programmer.
So I think he's going to be like the culinary commander who basically approves every official ingredient, recipe, everything for every race too. And when you think about that, what works, and does it? And he gets all the bad feedback, like this doesn't taste like Diluvian steak or whatever. So
nice.
So I think that's his role. I don't know, culinary commander. I don't know what's a good title.
Culinary commander, I like it. The chief of culinary services,
Starfleet head of culinary arts.
There you go. It's an art. It's an art, not a practice.
Sandwich artist.
Starfleet Subway. Oh, that could be the name of the episode. I'll type that in. Peter, what's your pick?
Well, I was not to seem too close, but the race I was gonna give you one of my favorites from Strange New Worlds because that's what we were doing. I'm gonna go with the Enar.
Oh, all right.
So, a subset of the Andorians, and also because Darth, you're going to be one of those. You're going to be a shuttle pilot.
Ooh.
So you're the greatest in the quadrant.
Darth shuttle pilot. I like it. And an Enar now, Todd, as you probably picked up at reviewing Strange New Worlds, the Enar is the blind, little lighter colored skin Andorian. There's their sister race. So
I was wondering about that. I just looked it up. And I'm like, oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Oh, there you go. Well, if we're playing, and I'll keep it in the Enterprise space because Enar, Andorian, both big races in Star Trek Enterprise. So I'll go with one that we have not really seen since, and someone who put the bedrock in that alien species is a friend of the show who we've talked to several times. I'll go with a Denobulan. That was Dr. Phlox, our friend John Billingsley. And instead of being a doctor, he is a DJ. Because let's face it, DJs, that's a thing on Star Trek Discovery. Yeah, they just waka waka. So he is a Denobulan DJ on a ship in the Discovery era where apparently that kind of thing was tolerable, maybe even on the Enterprise itself.
We have seen a Denobulan in a red shirt on Strange New Worlds fighting in the transporter room with somebody else.
How did I miss that? We'll have to talk more about that later. That's crazy. Well, cool. So yes, Brian, welcome. Welcome to the Star Trek world, Mr. Freight Conductor. We will get to you in our next show. And again, thank you to the Nias family and everybody for supporting us. Again, patreon.com/secretfriendsunite. 7 days for free, half off your first month, and stay on board for as little as $2 a month. Great bargain. Lots of fun extra content to enjoy. All right, moving on. We have a couple of news stories. We're all just it's all Strange New Worlds here because that's what's going on in Star Trek right now. But we did get word coming down, and again, we usually get our news sources from the trekmovie.com. But Strange New Worlds is coming to an end. With season 5, and this is weird because season 4 is currently in production, probably getting pretty close to being done, and then season 5 will start subsequently. So if you think about it, season 4 will be out next year, probably approximately the same time period, and then season 5 will be on in 2027. But for some reason, now we know that the standard with these Star Trek shows has become 10-episode seasons because that's the streaming world. It's about as good as you get. This one will be 6 episodes, and I'm just kind of curious why 6 would end up being the number. I mean, what do you think, guys? Yeah, I know the obvious answer if you're not watching on YouTube is the making it rain stuff, but this is a very popular show. But Todd, you and I have talked for many years and years. I never really am able to get the whole ROI part of streaming. Like, it's not in the old days where you're like, we're selling ads for blah 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 a minute, and that's how we know how profitable the show is. So when it comes right down to it, why are they cutting just like a few? I mean, if they cut it in half, it would be 5, but this is 6. So is there some design behind this, or like we're going to have a 3-2-1?
3-2 arcs.
3-2
episode arcs.
Okay.
That's what the Clone Wars did when it came back for its final run.
Okay.
So, although they did 3 episode arcs, but
so
my guess is that's what we're doing. Either 2 3-episode arcs or 3 2-episode arcs.
So
we'll circle back to that, but yeah, Todd, go ahead, because I had a thought.
So I'm guessing this was part of a negotiation, and they probably told the creators, you're getting less episodes, money, whatever, and they most likely are getting, Paramount is most likely getting feedback when they look at the viewership and numbers of streaming. And try to figure out, like, okay, we know we will get so much from this. What's the bang for the buck? Probably that was like the point where they said, this is the most we can give you based on the budget. They're probably looking at a budget. Like, we'll give you $5 million. Do you want to do 10 episodes for that? Or I don't know what the budget is, or 6. And they're probably like, we could really do something big and maybe bring in some additional cast members or something with 6 rather than 10. So that's probably also part of it. And at this point, because Discovery was more like a longer arc, like like every season felt like an arc, there was no way to really wrap up things really well except for that was that bit. And I still have not seen the end of Discovery to see what did they do differently when they ended the show. Same thing with Lower Decks. How did they end that show?
Boy, I tell you, with Discovery, it was just, and I think Peter will agree with me, it was just very tacked on. Because with Discovery, that announcement actually happened last year during the time that we were on the cruise, and Doug Jones was a guest on the cruise. Same day it happened, he was speaking at a panel. He said, I had to get on a Zoom at 7 o'clock this morning, and they told us the show was ending. So they called them all back for reshoots, and they slapped an ending on there, and like a lot of stuff in the show, I know that we feel that it really didn't work, but I digress. So yes, please. Todd,
has season 4 officially finished filming, or is it still filming?
I've got this link here, and the fourth season began production early March and should wrap this summer. So very close to it.
Okay, so probably no changes to this season, but everything that is going to have to be adapted for a little shorter season or end the series is all going to be happening next year, probably.
Right, because it does say here a couple of bits, and again from this article, which we'll link, production on the last season, final season, will begin later this year, so continue on production and then drop. But additionally, the only other thing on the horizon for Star Trek for new content right now is the Starfleet Academy show, which Paramount did commit to a second season for that. And this also comes on the heels, as it looks like the whole Paramount Skydance merger is finally going to happen, and then we get a little bit better of an idea. But this kind of segues me into this second link that I have here, is that while the showrunners are talking about the end of the show, that Henry Alonso Myers is quoted here, and Akiva Goldsman, they run the show. It kind of feels like they have, because again, the episodes premiered this past week, the Tribeca Film Festival. Some content was showed, and I've not exactly pinned down exactly what they showed. I'm guessing first couple episodes, is that it seems like they kind of have a vibe to go in the direction that we've long talked about. When Strange New Worlds wrapped up season 2 at the end of the summer in 2023, so almost exactly 2 years ago, we all sat around here. It was the three of us and some other people that have made the shows with us over the years, and said, who would we fan cast to round out that show? What episodes would be a good fit to enhance or build around in this kind of different stuff? So, if all the stars came into alignment, if we were to put some kind of percentage to it to think if they could actually do something like this, could they keep the show going into a TOS era? Could they do something with it? Or are they gonna just finally say enough is enough? Todd, you and I have talked for many years about how dangerous prequels can be and how you alienate the fans, but we've also talked about the fact that the original Star Trek is going to hit 60 years old next year, and a lot of those really ardent fans are and Peter's a big fan. I like TOS, but there are less of those fans that are fans of other stuff as time goes by. So what do you guys think? A real chance for a real, maybe softish reboot or a Ret-Khan and a reintegration of TOS? Do you think that it could go in this direction, or does the cancellation or the ending of the show mean that they're done with this?
I mean, I'm just gonna say I don't want this TOS reboot, flat out. I don't, because that'll just cause more problems amongst the fandom, I think. Because the Skydance thing and all that, I think we're going to see a change in direction on what they're going to be working on. What that's going to look like, I can't say. I don't know. But I do think that we're going to see some shifting in who's doing what and what precisely is being worked on. So I think this
Gotcha.
is, I don't know that this is indicative of like them completely shifting directions, but I think it does point that they want to start something else. So maybe like,
okay. Yeah. So it's really going to be the big grab. What do you think, Todd? Do you think that makes sense, or do you think they might surprise us?
I mean, Peter's absolutely right with that. I mean, Paramount's got a ton of debt right now, and with their change of the guard, I'll be curious to see what they think about Star Trek. Do they like it? Are they supportive of it? Because they want things to make more money, just like Disney. That's why you see Disney movies in theaters making that cash. Plus, then the series are less important.
Yeah.
I mean, Charlie, Paramount Plus. What do they love the most? Yellowstone and those shows. Tyler Sheridan will be making the next Star Trek. I think that's where we're at.
Oh,
yes.
Star Trek
Dragon Train to the Stars. We're going back.
It's truly a space western. But the thing that I was thinking about is, and I think I've mentioned to you, Charlie, is I don't mind the idea of not a reboot of TOS, but basically take this cast that we're getting, and then we do it with the adventures never seen on screen of that crew. So to your point, Peter, what meddles with timelines, but maybe we say there's some adventures they have, and maybe they can be non-impactful to relationships, but it's just more adventures with that crew we like, and that might be a happy medium.
I think the happy part would be if we just straight up acknowledge this is a separate timeline.
Yeah,
or something. Yeah.
Yes, we'll take a real hard turn, and it'll end up being this crew with Chris Pine and all his guys. Just complete insanity.
Maybe it goes, this is our new movie cast too. Yeah, they just basically, here's your new movie cast.
There you go.
Enjoy.
Yes. Well, we will find out when we, as time goes by, but then also talk about season 3 of Stranger Worlds. That will be next month, so we will get back into that. But let's talk about what we're here for, to get you ready. Let's say you're someone who's tuned into this. Maybe you're one of our new Patreons. You don't know anything about Star Trek, but you decided, you know what, I'm going to try this show out. What is Strange New Worlds? That's why we're here today. That's why we brought in Todd, who's a big Strange New Worlds advocate. But we're going to talk about Strange New Worlds. So for the uninitiated, Strange New Worlds is the 10th Star Trek spinoff. It's been around since 2022, started in May of 2022. Ran for 10 episodes. It was a summertime show. Earned itself a Primetime Emmy nomination and a win for the Saturn Awards. And the second season was announced in January. It was announced prior to it coming out. So same thing. Show came out. We knew a second season was going to happen before we ever saw the first show. So it was a year later that the second season came out, and it ran from June to August in 2023. Lot of high viewership, a lot of audience demand. We got some kind of genre building, kind of weirdish episodes, which we'll talk about here in a moment. Another nomination for a Primetime Emmy, Hugo Award nominations, and yet another Saturn win. Nominations for Those Old Scientists, which is an episode I'm sure we'll talk about, and Subspace Rhapsody, which was a musical, which I feel like will get mentioned as well. But so let's get right on into it. I'm kind of envisioning a round robin here. I put some topics out here for you guys to kind of think about, to take some notes on. I know I had those 2 seasons on in the background just when I was working, and I would occasionally glance over, make some notes, whatever it is, just when I was doing my regular work stuff. I've mentioned I've seen the first 5 episodes, as other people in the journalism world have seen. Can't say a ton about that, but enough to say that I'm very excited. So let's get it started with Todd. You did your review, and I know you probably did some recap videos, because it's kind of 20 episodes to squeeze into, even if you have a little bit of little regard, is some homework. But God bless YouTube to give us those great recap videos. Let me have top 3 episodes and or moments that you encountered when you were doing your review.
Combine both seasons, correct? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. That makes it a little tougher. But especially it's kind of better to talk about the top episodes.
Yeah.
It's kind of a theme for me, because the episodes I've really enjoyed have been where humor and kind of like really embracing wacky sci-fi has been okay. It's lighter Star Trek to a large extent, but the way they handled it has been very good. So Spock Amok, great episode. It's like Freaky Friday, very fun, very enjoyable. Kind of, once again, a couple that are like, hey, tread a mile in my shoes, and that's exactly what they get to do. You got to really just some really unique moments with the significant other who, quite honestly, she's trying hard, but it's not working great. And, long distance relationships are hard to do. And I just love that we got that moment. Very, very cool. Really recommend that episode. Another episode I really liked. It's funny that I'm finding I liked a lot from season 1. The Serene Squall. This is once again the Flim Flam, a hidden asset coming in and unexpected, and then you get to basically have in a kind of comedic, but showing their additional abilities to manage a threat, which is essentially create a mutiny, which is something I think Star Trek trains you to do because obviously they don't want you to do. But I loved how they were able to manage that, influencing all those things to taking the ship, and then the adversary, the captain of the pirates, essentially, was a cool character that I think, could come back, obviously, which is kind of neat. You make a good character, you want them to come back, which is great. Obviously, part of it is not knowing who that character was. And then I think with that, there were some episodes that I had challenges with, but I think another episode I really enjoyed was the finale of season 2, just because it heightened everything. It did what a great writing and things can do. It basically introduced the Gorn so early on, built them up on a couple of different episodes, and now it's paying off, which I love. It wasn't like one season all about the Gorn. It was definitely parsing what we know, building it in, and then bringing in the threat as a whole. And now we're at a great cliffhanger, which Star Trek has had some great cliffhangers. It's been so great to have that come back and feel important. So that's where my top 3 would be, even though there's others that are great. So it's like, it was hard to choose because there's so many good episodes in the series, because these are truly standalone episodes for the most part, which other series are not lately.
Right. Yeah. No, we've really moved away from that. All right, Peter, what about you?
So I kind of picked a few from both seasons. So I think my top one overall would be Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow.
Me too.
I'm a big fan of time travel stuff, going back to the present and just kind of like, I don't know how the heck to deal with this, which is just hilarious. Like, what is this circle door thing? I don't understand this. I'm from space. Okay.
Yeah, right.
So like just kind of the silly stuff there, like, Kirk playing chess, like, oh, this 2D stuff is child's play. Like, and one of the things that I really appreciated, even though this is an alternate version of Kirk, they actually showed James Tiberius Kirk as James Tiberius Kirk, not Zap Brannigan, which is how everyone thinks of James Kirk, which is a problem. Shatner. And so this one, true. No, Shatner's Kirk is fine, but it's just one of these things that, like, they actually showed that Captain Kirk is intelligent, which if you watch the show, you know that. If you watch the movies, you know that. But people don't know that. Captain Kirk is intelligent. Captain Kirk is compassionate. Captain Kirk knows when to keep his distance, right?
Right.
He sleeps on the couch. So I think that one of the things that's really, really good about this episode, and the dynamics between him and La'an are hilarious. The Romulan thing was a little bit of a stretch, but I was mostly okay with it. But like a lot of the dynamics between the characters were really good. The Ret-Khan of Khan being now in the 2000s was like, I see what you did there.
Title, Charlie.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. All right, let me change it. Keep talking.
It's like we're retconning this. Okay, I see why. I understand. It's more fun if you try to make it work, but them saying,
kill a little boy.
Well, yeah,
she did. Apparently,
that makes the choice a little easier versus like a shitty teenager, right?
Yeah. Well, but I'm just saying, like, the idea that the eugenics wars happened in the 90s. Yep. Like there were comics and books that tried to make it work. And I think that's a little bit more creative and a little more interesting. Yeah. But having been said, It was kind of bringing this whole thing and doing this time travel thing, and then it all culminates in, would you kill baby Hitler? No.
Yeah, it was or Thanos,
Well, yeah, but like the classic philosophical problem.
Baby Hitler have a mustache?
Yes, absolutely.
He probably did. So there's just something really good about this episode in that regard, of especially the characters, and that it's a classic time travel with an actual question.
Yeah. Yeah.
So my second one, because I like the zany stuff, is Those Old Scientists. I liked seeing those characters come from animation into live action. There was some wonky stuff with some of the character decisions, especially around Uhura and Mariner. Just there was some odd things, like they wanted the characters to interact, but it was just a fun, goofy time travel episode. I thought it was hilarious. And then my third one is actually the Elysian Kingdom. As much as I gave crap to the end of that episode, because I wasn't a huge fan of the ending, but the rest of the episode is just hilarious. You can see that the cast are having a ball, and that's just it's fun to see television where you can tell that the cast are enjoying what they're doing. Yeah, and that was one.
Agreed. As I'd mentioned, I also had tomorrow, but I'll add my notes at the end. But I liked the season 1 finale, The Quality of Mercy. This was your alternate history, your A Christmas Carol is a very ingrained trope in sci-fi. It's been done in any show you can think of. But I think they added something to it. I think they did it well at the very least. So we know that, Pike is trying to cheat the devil. He's trying to see, well, what if I can find a way to reverse my fate and save these kids or whatever it is. And at the end of it, he's faced with this choice where he causes Spock to be crippled and puts the Federation in war with the Romulans that may never end. So it was good to, and they did it in TNG with Tapestry with Q and Picard. And hey, what if I was, not such a rogue in my youth and had made better choices? And he ended up being an old guy who never got a promotion. So I liked it. It did, as customers, it gave us the awful modification of the Monster Maroon, which Peter and I are very scornful of, but it's a minor footnote. Do I think, kind of the good things that they did with it. So
it's not minor, but it is a footnote.
But it is a footnote, yes. Season 2, the Ad Astra per Aspera. This was the trial of Una. So I was shocked to be reminded how much contrast to past and present fights for civil rights are represented by this trial, with everything going on in the world right now. Not to get too deep into it, but we had a guest star, and it was scriptless women's names. Yataid Badaki was Nira Katalu. My God, they've just made that more difficult. That was Una's estranged childhood friend. So that was a cool dynamic. And again, Una is a character we know almost nothing about. We found out that she was this genetically enhanced humanoid early in the series. So
that's from the comics, though.
Yeah, and it was from the comics. No, you're absolutely right. So it is cool to see that even from the Marvel continuity from the 90s get bled back into to canon. But I love her, bring her back. And Todd, you'll appreciate this because I thought of you when I wrote it. I said, the episode's so good, I give Captain Battelle, that's Pike's girlfriend, a pass for being a starship captain and a JAG lawyer. Like JAG, the show, a fighter jet flying lawyer. Right, Todd? Good stuff.
Beam me up so I can serve some papers.
Exactly. Yeah. No, well, that's exactly what happened. They didn't even serve papers. That was the cliffhanger ish of the previous one. So
it's her like catchphrase. Objection.
You just need the whoosh behind you.
That's right. Exactly. Peter gets it.
No, yeah, I'm forgetting the name, but yeah.
Ace Attorney.
Yep. Ace, yeah, exactly. All right, so I did wrap it up by tomorrow. This was Paul Wesley's second appearance as Captain Kirk, even though he was not. He's a different alt version of himself. So if you watch it, fun, whimsical term. I love the line, I can make ploming soup in a toilet, which is...
That whole interaction was hilarious.
Very nice. And Lon and the heartbreaker at the end, and it does set up something that happens later in the season. I love USA Canada stuff, and maybe it's because our third wheel is Mark in this, and he's a Canadian. But when he's talking about where they are, and Lon obviously knows they shot in Toronto because it's where the show shoots, but he flubs it and says we're in Boston or something. I can't remember where he said.
We're in New York.
We're in New York. Yeah, exactly.
I love that Carol Kane also, her character showed up in this, which was great. I thought it was a great ad to give a little depth to that character, to basically say, she's long lived and has been around. And I like that part.
She's the Guinan of this show, and she's a better Guinan than Guinan was at the end of Picard. But I gave those old scientists my honorable mention, the crossover. I've met Tawny a handful of times. She's very irreverent. So it's funny when she acts, she doesn't act like meeting her in real life, but she is a very, very kooky person and really enjoy spending time with her. So, well, cool. All right, let's move along back to Todd. Couple of 2 or 3 misses or missed opportunities, you think, looking at the whole ball of wax?
Yeah, so I'm going to go through. Unfortunately, I'm going to conflict with at least one of Peter's picks, and that will be the Elysian Kingdom. I knew what they were going for. I think the execution to me was just a little too much, like with Pike.
Oh, it was
like the sniveling. Yeah, very corny. It just, and then like the ending, I felt like a trope we've seen before. But I wish it would just been executed a little bit better. But still, I'm glad they were taking some chances. So I'll give them points for that. And obviously, it's kind of neat to see Mbenga has been treated very well with the show. The different facets of his background we get, which is great, because sometimes I felt like other Star Trek shows, I won't mention names, have done very badly at actually bringing in the whole crew and kind of giving them their story opportunities. So I'm glad that he got his opportunity to do that. So that's probably one of my bigger misses. I will also then hit on, I think the elephant in the room, or the musical in the room.
It's on my list too.
That episode, Subspace Rhapsody. I have enjoyed so many musicals within like TV shows, just the way they've been able to do it. Obviously, Once More with Feeling, even the Flash episode that was good. We've gotten many opportunities in The Simpsons and other shows. This one, where it failed, because I think the crew was up to the task, it was the songwriting was not good.
And also
I don't know why.
Yeah, I remarked, I said, I love, and I'll throw mine in here, but I love music, and I'm tolerant of some musicals. Yes. I like more of the classics, but this was just not good. I wrote it felt like an SNL skit in a shitty one at that. And I hate to say that, because even the songwriters, remember, it was what's her face from Letters from Cleo. Remember, she was K something. I'm drawing a blank on her name. And people absolutely love this. There are people in SFI, which Peter and I are part of, who would have watch parties so they could watch this. And I'm just like, I couldn't even stand the dance, like the rap dance and Klingons. It's just make it go away. Make it go away. I just,
yeah. Yeah, I feel like writing a musical is hard. To your point, Peter, like the lack of interconnectivity at times, it just felt very all over the place in type of some of their theming. And a lot of it felt forced too.
Yeah, the weird thing is like you can do eclectic musical choices. Like look at Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, for instance. It uses like every single song is a different genre.
Everything,
You can do that. It's just, for whatever reason, these did not go together.
Yeah. It was chocolate and peanut butter. So we got thrown off. Todd, what else you got?
So other than that, I really don't know if there are many others that I felt like were not good episodes. But some were not as strong as the others. But those would be my 2 standouts, which is just sad because I do like the silly. So it's not like, Todd's an old grump. I mean, I know I am, but at least in this instance, I've really loved it when they've nailed it. Like Charades is another episode I really like too. Very fun. Very like dealing with girlfriend's parents.
Yeah, right.
Well, this is very good. No, it isn't.
Yes, exactly.
Well, I guess it isn't then. Peter, go ahead.
So I went more with concepts rather than episodes.
Yeah, I did too. Yeah,
just because that was more where I felt my comments would fit better. So no, I don't know. I want to say it's number 1, but up there for me is the freaking Gorn. I hate this version of the Gorn with a fiery passion, the heat of City Alpha 5. It's these are not the Gorn that I have seen in Enterprise or TOS. These are xenomorph monsters, and I hate that for this.
Yeah,
come up with a different species.
Yeah, it's funny that the Mission Log Discord I belong to, that has been a thread of conversation the last couple of days. Make a new alien
doing it as doing this stuff. Fine, I'm fine with that. Bringing in the xenomorph type stuff, bringing in like a scary monster and all that. I'm not opposed to that.
Yeah,
it's just not the Gorn, because you're making the Gorn into a monster rather than an intelligent species that Kirk can have an intelligent conversation with, even though the Gorn is a jerkface in Arena. Yeah, right. There is something to be said for othering the Gorn.
Othering.
And so this is something that I don't think this was a good call.
Yeah.
Peter, I was going to ask you about that, because I'm a little confused too, because we talked about like the Gorn have like done things. And I'm curious if they are this like uncontrollable force. But I'm just saying that's kind of like how I feel they're treated right now. But I'm like, if they're actually supposed to be a race you can interact with and see, like, we haven't seen that yet. So I'm like, how are they going to make that
how are you going to make that jump? Because the Gorn hegemony is supposed to be a government that the Federation has a relationship with, and that the Klingons are allies with.
Yeah. Right.
So you can't just be like, oh well, we're allies with monsters.
Yeah, and all they show is they're the xenomorphs from the Aliens films. That's what they show.
Right. And like there's like hints and bits and pieces of like maybe there's some sort of culture, or maybe there's some sort of reasoning. Like La'an kind of gives like there's a thought process to what they do when they release like survivors. But it's so like surface level, it doesn't really work.
I was thinking, is this more like they have a caste system, or maybe they even have like, this is kind of like their brute force, like kind of like drone, like worker bees, things like that. This is who you send out to wreck crap. And then maybe there's levels of like more intelligence and things like that. Because, obviously we got the weird treatment of Klingons, and now we found out, there's different versions of Klingons. So maybe this is more like, or even Halo, where they have like that race, they have the different races that actually support the Covenant. So I don't know. I'm hoping we get answers to that.
It's possible, but with the end of the episode of season 2, where we saw the Gorn in the spacesuit and it's the same thing, I don't think we're going to see that sort of distinction.
Yeah, that was tough. What Todd suggests makes sense, because you could explain away a lot of things. But we've watched the Gorn go from their iconic appearance in TOS and Arena to the brief appearance that we saw in Enterprise, where we got more of a dinosaur-like lizard creature, which could still speak.
Which was a fine retcon, because that one actually, it tried to make it a little bit less of a man in a rubber suit and more of a creature that is still threatening, but still anthropomorphic in a way that it can be both relatable as a person and able to communicate.
And now we're full blown CGI monster. So it's just it's tough to reconcile all of that and say it's all the same thing, as opposed to not just making them something new or different, which
and you can still do a reptilian monster. That's fine. We don't have enough of those. We have 3.
Right.
So
more reptiles.
What was the Voyager race of creatures that were kind of like
the
Voth were the dinosaur ones?
Yeah, dinosaur.
No, not that, but the other creature that kind of felt like were like an unstoppable force. They were climbing on the upside of
the predator and prey. The
Hirogen.
The Hirogen, exactly.
Yeah, there's the Hirogen, and then in Enterprise, I think you're thinking of the Suliban that were the one climbing on the wall.
I was just trying to think.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we also have the Xindi reptilians. So like we have had cold-blooded creatures, but we haven't had that many. So we could do with more.
Yeah. It was a weird choice. All right, what else you got, Peter?
I also have and anyone who knows me is going to see this coming from 5,000 miles away. I don't like the retconning. Particularly with Spock.
That was mine as well, so we can intertwine.
I don't really like how they're using Spock as a character. One, I think it's undermining his character development that happens in the films particularly, but also during TOS. And they're leaning too much into his humanness. Like even in like the first couple episodes, it's like all of a sudden he's acting more human, and everyone's like, "Oh, well, you're human." Like there is a thing that we saw in the show in TOS where like Spock is like concertedly trying to be less human and be more Vulcan. But this Spock isn't doing that. He's fighting with it, but he's losing that fight, and not in a way that is consistent with his character for later on.
Right.
Like, you could see him lose a couple battles, but then come back stronger. But we're not seeing that, particularly with the way that they keep kicking him into human form and Spock is the whipping boy of this show, unfortunately.
Yeah, everything bad really
where,
does.
Like, you
really
turn him into a
happen to
human. Like, as much fun as Spock Amok was, there was a little bit too much of that. As much fun as charades was, there was way too much of that. Where Spock is just getting beat to shit as a character. It hurts me because this is one of my favorite characters of all time. And so to see Spock, who is portrayed amazingly by Leonard Nimoy, and it just feels like they don't get Spock as a person. They get Spock as the idea. They get Spock as the character concept, but they don't get Spock as a whole being with all of his complexities and with all of his motivations.
The whole Spock.
So they've made those up, and those motivations do not match with Leonard Nimoy's version of the character. And so it's just a weird connection.
Todd, please.
Is this the official, like...
Yes, there you go.
Yes. Okay, there we go. Actually, there's a hand raising in the thing. I've never used that before. I should probably use that. So my question is, and maybe this is a hope, in regards to Spock, are we seeing all of the crap happen to him in regards to the emotional turmoil? So maybe we do see him become, like, the journey actually becomes to be more Vulcan-like as he learns, because he's connected too much with humans. So maybe we'll see like more of an arc in that way, where he gets to be more like the because obviously this is before he even gets on, with his core cast. So maybe we see that. I don't know. Hopefully, maybe. Because I agree. I think it would be good to see more of the Spock that we like.
Yeah, exactly. The Spock that we come to expect. Yeah,
it's the tie. It's also the tie with Nurse Chapel, with that relationship. It's too soon, too much. Yeah. And also, I think that because of his relationship with Sarek, it wouldn't make sense to be doing what you're doing, because he is rebelling against Sarek in a way, and also trying to prove Sarek wrong. That's his big thing. Is Sarek thinks I'm not Vulcan enough. Damn it! I am going to be the most Vulcan-y Vulcan to ever Vulcan.
Right. Which he works really hard at in the first TOS, the only TOS appearance of Sarek, which would be the Journey to Babel, which I watched just recently. That he's duty bound, and that's why he doesn't help his father in that episode. But I would watch it. But I'll add a couple of notes to this one, and then Peter, if you have another one. But then I have my final one. But tossing out everything about Vulcan culture as it relates to T'Pring and Spock, the Vulcan have the Ponfar. They get together physically every 7 years. They just don't get together whenever. But
it's not logical.
It's not logical. And T'Pring, if she's so super duper Vulcan, she wouldn't be hopping in bed with him at every aspect. They don't do that. So they've thrown that out the window. And then the whole friends with benefits thing with Spock and Chapel. In the original series, Chapel was the unrequited love. She loved Spock from afar, but nothing ever happened with that. Where with this, they have a very typical workplace romance thing happening, and I believe
it also kind of justifies T'Pring's divorce of Spock, which I don't think really goes with how that episode is meant to be watched.
Yeah, and when they bring it all the way back around to TOS and with the Amok time, everybody looks at T'Pring on screen and be like, oh, she's so beautiful. Who is she? Everybody's met her. You know what I mean? They all know her. Yeah, it was 5 years ago, but yeah, it's just so I get some retconning and I get a little bit of soft revision isn't here and there, but when you're throwing out the baby with the bathwater and your core tenets of a race or a character are just kind of getting dumped by the wayside because, well, now we can do this thing. I don't love that. So you're right. I'm not super psyched about how Spock is being regarded with his existing Spockiness in the show. I think it's kind of a detriment. So, Peter, any more?
I have one more, and this is probably going to be a spicy take.
Oh God, here we go. Ooh.
I think that sometimes Strange New Worlds has strayed into the 2x4 method of discovery in terms of its moral storytelling. One of which was, and I know this is going to ruffle some feathers was the court-martial episode. I hated that episode because it was a misuse of how court-martials work. It's not actually about redoing the law. It's seeing whether or not a certain situation fits the code of military justice. And so it seemed to be a misunderstanding of how those work, number one.
It was like JAG. It was JAG'd and NCIS.
Yeah. And number two, there was too much heavy-handedness in terms of like, hey, you know those things that are happening on Earth right now as the show is being made? Yeah, those are the problem. There was a little bit too much of that in that episode and in the very, very first episode where it's like, hey, you saw this thing? This led to World War III. Didn't, but there's just a little bit too much
in the show. It could lead to World War III in real life, but not.
I mean, I'm not going to comment on that. But like, there was a little bit too much of the finger waggling in a way that wasn't the same. Like Star Trek does do that in a way, like it has in the past, but there's a little bit. I don't know. There's more of a feeling of I have the high ground, and that's not a good place to be telling a story, in the sense that if you want someone to listen to you and you want someone to agree with you or at least think, that's not putting yourself on the soapbox and then saying you peasants had better listen to me. Not a good way to do
persuasive.
it.
Listen to me, peasants.
Yeah. So there was some tonal story writing with that one, and a little bit with what's the episode? The one with the kid.
The silence reach, the kid that's the battery.
Yeah, the kid that's the kid
the chosen one.
Yeah, the chosen one.
The golden child, right?
Yeah. I mean, it was very. It was kind of obvious what we were going for, but it was a little bit heavy-handed in the way that the characters handled it in the end, right? And so there's certain things in the method of storytelling and the method of telling moral stories that doesn't invite a dialogue, and it more leans towards a lecture. And I don't think that's one. I don't think it's helpful for modern storytelling because of what's going on. And two, I don't think it necessarily fits with how Star Trek used to tell stories.
Yeah. I suppose I could see that. All right. Mine is nitpicky. So I'll give you a nitpicking one. The fucking rank stripes. They can't get them right. No, I'm serious. I'm serious because it's really easy. Think about this. United States Navy rank stripes are, 4 stripes as a captain, 3 stripes as a commander. In TOS, they simply dial back 1 stripe. So it's like a captain or in the Navy, a lieutenant commander is 2 thick, 1 thin. And then in Star Trek, it's the same for captain. But in this, they've gone to the way it looks in the U.S. Navy sometimes. But like in Discovery, they were full TNG because they had little pips on the badges. That was easy. That was easy to sort out. But I like this outfit kind of better than the original TOS version, which was kind of this velour nightmare that they never could get consistent. These are all nice and consistent, but stay on those. The rank stripes in these look like, it's like, Peter, hold up your wrists. Right? Like yours is like,
see them.
Yeah, that's supposed to be a lieutenant, but in the Navy, but not in the TOS, which is just kind of makes me nuts. So
yeah, this is Lieutenant Commander.
Yeah, exactly. So it's squirrely whirly, and it drives me crazy.
That's why you put the rank on top so you don't have to look down at their arms.
Exactly. Which is and it's also what they do in TNG going forward. They have
in the films they put it up here. So
yeah, exactly. So you don't have to swirl around. So, and then I already mentioned the Monster Maroon, which was a sacrilegious. You don't mess with Monster Maroon. It is the.
Do you want to know my spicy name for it?
What?
The Dumpster Maroon.
Oh, so spicy. Oh, my goodness. All right, let's wrap this up. One each, a top hope for season 3. Todd.
Ooh. Top hope is I really hope they continue on the path of not only focusing on the things we already know, meaning if there are alien races where we have only touched on them a little bit, give them a little bit more of a presence, play around with the crew maybe, where to Peter's point, hey, did you see that one like wait, there was one? Oh my goodness. It's kind of like, let's play around with this, because I think it's really good to bring in some unknown pockets. That'd be great. And I think also, we got one presence of the Klingons where obviously they save the day by getting drunk. Great. But the Klingons are great. It's never too painful to bring in the Klingons we like. The Romulans, I'm cool with anybody you want to bring in, even maybe bring in some other areas that have been touched upon. But I would like more of that, because I really do enjoy when we see different aliens.
Another reptilian bringing a Zen Kethi. We know that they've had relations with the Federation. We never see them.
Or bring us back some Xindi. What happened to the Xindi? It's been 100 years. What are they up to? Yeah, I agree with that too. Peter, what about you?
Top hope for the next season.
Hope.
Yeah,
rebellions are built on hope. Come on now.
They are. I think that I kind of hope that we get some more fun storytelling, and not as much as I do enjoy serious stuff. I think that I think that there's a need, and Strange Worlds has been doing this too, but there's a need to embrace the camp. TOS was always a little campy. Star Trek always does well in the camp. Watch Star Trek 4 if you don't.
Yeah. Space hippies. So bring in the space hippies.
I don't want the space hippies. Those are different, but I don't like those guys. But I mean, you could do them funny, but like, do some more of that fun stuff. You can have fun with the characters. Obviously, the Canonista in me is like, please, for the love of all that's holy, by the blessing of the great
Just
bird,
call yourself a Canonista?
Yes.
I love that.
Please follow canon a little bit more closely. That's not going to happen.
Canonistas, why not make it a terrorist group?
It's different than a.
Have you not heard this term before? Because it's been around since 2009.
Yeah.
No, I have not.
I've been called a Canonista since I was complaining about the JJ movies.
I love the term.
Yeah, so I just want. Yeah, so I just want some more fun with the characters, and for the love of God, please follow canon a little bit more closely and lead into it.
I might have to change your name on the SFU website to Peter the Canonista Stein. What do you think about that?
I mean, it would be accurate. So
I like it.
Can I have a mulligan?
Oh, sure. Why not?
I want a certain Mr. Mudd to come back.
Oh, boy.
I really find him so amazing, but maybe Peter doesn't.
I didn't like Disco's version of Mudd. If they let him, let him play Mudd again and amped up the camp like he's supposed to be, that would be fine.
More Dwight? Yeah. Do we want more Dwight?
If he amped the camp, I'd be fine with more Dwight.
He was a very satirical character, but to the point of what we talked about previously, they just decided to completely change everything about him to say, look, we stuck in this thing from the old show, but it's not the same character.
Yeah. Mudd the Edgelord, not Mudd the goofy pirate.
Yeah, exactly. That was the problem. That was the problem. So yeah, if they somehow brought it back, but he's like, I got hit on the head and I had a total personality change, and now I'm all wacky, blah blah blah.
I think a humbled Mudd could be good, maybe.
A humbled Mudd. I will say, we've already kind of talked about this, and what Todd said kind of helped me refine this down a little bit. Bringing in the other characters, casting the other characters who were TOS, and this isn't going to happen in season 3, but we have season 4 and season 5 and 5/16, 6/10. Cast. Who have we got left? We've got Sulu. We have Chekhov.
McCoy is the big one, and Janice Rand. So we'll call it 4 because I think that's what we talked about back then. Mm-hmm.
And then seeing let's call it a limited series of exactly what Todd said, poking in like a little, like it's an adventure that would have happened in season 1 of TOS, or this would have been or stuff that happened within the first year, because go
find some of the old Phase 2 scripts, which have been done by some fans, but maybe refine them a little bit and tell one of those.
Yeah, exactly. So I still think there's some mileage they could get off of putting Paul Wesley in the center seat, making him Kirk, because I think we all think that he's great for the role. He's been on a number of times. He's back again in season 3. No big surprise there. And seeing what they can do with it. So, well, cool. That's our recap then of Strange New Worlds. The show returns on Paramount Plus on July 17th, which is a Thursday. And when we return from our little hiatus, which we'll talk about later in the month of July, we'll jump in and talk about that. We've got a great slate of guests lined up that are going to cover the show with us. But we're going to say goodbye to Todd, who is not going to stick around for what will be a very goofy second segment. But Todd, he loves Vulcans. That's what this is. Vulcan.
That also looked kind of Minbari, so you're kind of mixing the two.
There you go. I'm all over the place. Yeah, I'm a hot mess.
Yeah, absolutely. Todd, where do people find you out there?
You can find me on the Blue Skies at Todd Oxtra, and of course, always follow at Secret Friends Unite. Doing more there, sharing all our stuff. So thanks for having me on, guys. It was a trip, and Nanu, with you,
Nanu,
and live long and prosper.
All right, okay. We'll be back in just a second. And we're back. It's just Peter and myself. He did point out we did have some comments about Strange New Worlds, which going back and forth between documents I kind of missed. But we had Mark Flessa, who has been kind of part of our Facebook group since probably for 10 of our 13 years that we've had it. But Mark said, I want to see an episode focusing on Ortegas, which we do get a bit more of that even in these first 5 episodes. So we
nice. That is a character that's kind of been in the background a bit.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Plus, I'd like to see an episode or 2 on Federation world building, which I always think is great. So
Canonista approves.
Canonista approves. Andy, who is Andrea, who is a very nice woman who I've met from I've met her over on the Mission Log Discord. She's now part of our SFU Discord, and she does a podcast, which she invited me as a guest on. We talked about the 1968 film. It's a musical podcast. It's called the World Stage Theater Podcast. It was the 1968 Barbara Streisand film Funny Girl, which I'd never seen. It was Streisand's theatrical debut, which was fascinating. So Andy says, the Pike speech in Strange New Worlds, the episode, immediately springs to mind. Kirk talking about idiot chess and tomorrow is the smaller moment. I also love Boimler and Mariner causing chaos and those old scientists. Who doesn't? That was all super great stuff. So cool. Thanks, both of you, for tuning in. Hopefully, Mark, I don't know if Mark listens to the podcast, but I hope he does. But we'll give you another shout out when we share the episode. Hopefully we'll get you tuned in. All right. So jumping into what I think might be a relatively short segment. This is our second pass at wrapping up TOS. We were TNG, thank you very much. Like I said, TOS so much in the last segment, it's just like there's too many T's.
Yeah.
And I just said those old scientists, so maybe it was a mnemonic device. We were super psyched to have Dr. Trek himself, Larry Nemechek, on with us last week when we wrapped up the last bit of season 7. But on your season 7, and again, this is only available on disc to watch it. So if you just have it on streaming,
Internet Archive does have Journey's End.
Okay, very good. Well, you see, look at that. You spoiled the name of it. I'm just kidding. This is a documentary that was produced at the time TOS ended. And I remember watching it when it was brand spanking new. It's called Journey's End, the saga of Star Trek The Next Generation. Included on the DVD, which came out in the mid-aughts. The Blu-rays came out in the early teens. So it is available to watch. And as Peter mentioned, you can dig it up online if you so choose to dig. But yeah, it was a documentary, first broadcast the week of May 15th of 94. So this was 2 weeks before, or maybe only a week, because I think the finale came out the week of the 23rd or maybe 28th.
I think that's right.
I was graduating from high school at the exact moment, but this came out and it was very much a rah-rah. This is what's coming up and all this different stuff. So this aired before a Next Generation Viewers Choice Marathon. I remember that too. It was written by Stephen Wolcott, who I don't know was part of the staff, and directed by Donald R. Beck, who is, again, these are names that are not known to me, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're not Star Trek people. This was hosted by Jonathan Frakes, who's wearing a beautiful 90s suit. It was a special look back at the show, behind the scenes of making All Good Things, the final episode, a visit to a very 90s looking Star Trek convention, which is in Pasadena, local in LA, the Grand Slam convention. Talked about the phenomena of the series and provided answers to relevant but fun questions from fans. In addition, the documentary presented sneak peeks of Star Trek Generations, which came out that fall, the third season of Deep Space Nine, not really, and Star Trek Voyager. Completely
there was a
in
reference,
peripheral terms, absolutely nothing actually about the show.
There was reference and then a concept art of the Voyager, which was a very, very early one.
Yeah, and and I love this. There's a citation from the Star Trek: The Next Generation Companion, written by our friend Larry Nemechek, second edition, page 300. That's actually the one I physically own a copy of. The filming of the documentary created tension among the series cast and crew. Most notably, Patrick Stewart had a run-in with the documentary's camera crew as a result of his exhaustion from appearing as Picard in every scene in All Good Things and having directed the preceding episode, Preemptive Strike. That totally makes sense. To just do this and you're just trying to do your job and you're wore out and all that kind of different stuff. So, all right, let's jump in. There's not I would say a ton to say about this, but I figured we'll just kind of walk through our observations. So, bang, opening up, standard definition, even on my Blu-ray disc, really difficult to look at. Looking at something that's like shot on a camcorder. The music is super 90s. Frakes says, Frakes, I love you. You know that I love you. That was the most 90s looking outfit and I lived that. I was an adult then, and I can remember, but it was super dated, but it was also friggin' magic. You know what I mean? And Peter, you're far too young to, because you were
I was like, I wasn't even 3 when this came out, so.
But yeah, and it's so funny. So a new chapter of legacy has begun. It's also ancient history, but they're talking about Generations, which was, in retrospect, not a great film. But there was all the buzz.
They were hopeful, though.
Yeah, they were very hopeful. You can feel. I would say, if nothing else about this doco, it's the hopefulness. The hopefulness of what's, the pride in what we've done, the excitement about this big finale, the first ever Star Trek finale, which was going to be just a couple of weeks away, and then a feature film. But then, they jump us back to 1986, and we get a lot. We get Patrick's very well-worn stories. I didn't think the show was going to land. I was living out of a suitcase, and then it turned into this life-changing thing. I was super not impressed. There's a lot of people that have a lot of feelings about Rick Berman. Love him or hate him, he did preside over some of the most memorable things that ever happened in Star Trek. But his rundown, walking through, talking about each character, just did not impress me. It really, to me, sounded like a kid who didn't read the book and he's up in front of the class doing a book report. I was just like, were you even?
It kind of felt like he was put on the spot and he was just like, okay.
Well, Marina Sirtis is a woman who played a role on the show, and she was on 7 years of the show, and she wore this outfit, and then later on she got a different outfit. Okay,
which might actually be what Galaxy Quest was making fun of when they had Sigourney Weaver talk about her Time magazine interview.
Oh, exactly. Exactly.
But that was kind of a strange one. I thought there were 2 things that I thought were kind of fun. One was having Marina do some of the directing of the music, the conducting. That was kind of fun.
And they were in costume, so they walked one stage over and were like,
it was like clearly they were in the middle of filming.
Yeah,
probably Preemptive Strike, because I don't know if she was wearing that uniform, I think, in the final scene.
Correct.
But so she clearly had just come off set, and then you can see the actual conductor is still kind of helping her keep tempo and everything. Yeah. But it's just kind of fun how
and at the end she says, "Okay, everybody take lunch" or whatever.
That was pretty cute.
It was pretty cool.
The other thing that I thought was really interesting was when Jonathan Frakes did that whole bit about finding new writers and finding new scripts and stuff, which we talked about multiple times, and how Michael Piller made that a thing, and then how. Then we got a very brief interview with Jerry Taylor. And I thought it was very interesting how she was talking about how to approach the writing of episodes, and how they need to be smart about the characters, but the writing really needs to be good. And if you're touching a social issue, you need to be smart about it. You need to do the dialogue, and then you also need to turn it on its head in a way that's sci-fi. And if you listen to segment 1, this is what I had in mind when I made my comment, because I had just watched this. So it was just very interesting seeing Jerry Taylor's take on, because she's one of the better writers that we've had in Star Trek.
Oh, absolutely.
And so it's just
rest in peace. Yeah.
Yeah. But it was just really cool seeing her verbalize that. So.
Mm-hmm. Totally. More corny bits where he explains how they shake with the camera, and then
it was funny. Yeah.
It was, yeah. And the thing that I found, and again, we jumped to the convention. He says Pasadena, so we know that it was, I said an early creation show, but it was Grand Slam or whatever. I said conventions back then were just super dated. The merch was super like ugh. And it was funny, they showed him and he was talking to the Worf stand-up, and he says
that was funny.
And I had that stand-up in this very room because this was, I live in the house I grew up in.
I saw one of the posters that I own on the wall. I was like, oh, look, it's the character poster.
My dad got that for me from a media function. His ex-wife worked for a rep firm, and so he was a media function for some kind of Star Trek anniversary, and he got that for me. So it was here in this basement for years. So that made me chuckle. But the little girl who comes out and asks for his autograph and calls William Shatner, that was just it was funny, but it was really painful.
It was such a really stupid scripted moment. It was funny, but it was just like, oh my god!
I know. A little girl was barely holding up her end of the bargain. It was like, excuse me.
By the way, my name is Patrick Stewart.
It's like we've got some notes, but as we've come to know, Jonathan Frakes, as he has continued to be this stalwart mouthpiece for the franchise, and he's still involved. He's arguably the biggest director in Star Trek to date, the one who has accomplished the most. It's just this was him in his prime, so it was pretty cool. But before we did this, we started at my direction. Peter and I started watching, or at least I was telling him about there was a doco that came out in 2012 at the end of the season 7 Blu-ray, of which this is also included on that same disc. Mm-hmm. That was a 3-part about just the final season. And as I watched it, I'm like, well, this is not really about the series, it's not what we want. But seeing the difference between 1994 and 2012 and just how much older they all looked, because we tend to just kind of freeze them as a moment in time, because we've seen these episodes so many times. So I mean, we all age. I'm not picking away at it, but something that I absolutely love, and this was interspersed with clips from All Good Things, and we also watched All Good Things recently. But watching how they put old age makeup on all of our characters, so Geordi, and then obviously Data, is like, well, he doesn't age, or at least that was the thought at the time, and then everybody else, and then watching them in season 3 of Picard, of which their characters would technically in universe be 5 or 10 years older. The old age makeup was so much worse than because now I like seeing them as older people.
I've always joked that they should go back and reshoot the future parts with them as now, just for shits and giggles.
I think it would be tremendous.
They're not going to do it, but it would be funny.
Yeah. I just love Frakes as I do. His segues between the segments, like the costuming bit where he's saying you're a Klingon and a Borg ripped your uniform. It was just so I can't even explain to you how A, it's cringy to listen to it now, but B, it was just that was the 90s. That was the 90s. It was the tee up to Deep Space Nine is ongoing, and they showed a couple of clips, and then I was psyched that we saw a bit with Armin, which we love Armin. He's been on this show. John Delancey, who I've met several times, they brought him in to talk about Q. And again, they name drop Voyager, and as Peter was saying, they give you a little taste of some design. It's like a page of sketches. Oh, this is what the ship might look like. It's like, oh, okay. It doesn't really land, you know what I mean? But whatever. I mean, and they brought in, Herman Zimmerman's talking about Generations, says, I'm hoping for the best. We have all these new sets, and I'm like, man, and he's trying really hard. It's a promotional piece, and I get it, but hindsight being 2020, looking back 30 years, I understand why you're hoping for the best. It doesn't always pan out. Yeah. And it would take several more. It would take a couple of years past this for us to really. Yeah, it would get till First Contact to actually have a good one. Yeah,
one of the interesting things when they were doing some of the stuff was they used like the behind the scenes footage. A lot of the scenes that we saw them shooting were alternate takes that we didn't see in the episode, which were kind of fun because because it's the curse of having seen these things way too many times. Right. But you can hear the cadence of the character. Like, that is a different take than the one I saw on screen. And so it's just kind of it was just a fun little thing because there was, especially the shot where they showed Picard asking the stardate. The way that Worf delivered that was just different enough that it was like, this is a different take.
Exactly.
And it's just fun little details like that.
Right. And when you can tell it's filmed from a third camera because the ADR hasn't been done to get the line from the other person, you can just hear him say blah, 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 off camera. So I love their finale preview. And again, the music and the edits that shows you nothing because they didn't want to give away a damn thing except for what they showed. Like, well, here's Riker in old age makeup, but he's talking to the camera and he's being silly. I will say, just to wrap up my commentary, anytime I hear Frakes talk about all the time he spent with Gene Roddenberry during his 6 weeks of auditions to become Riker, just seems so very special, and maybe it's in particular because of an upcoming Patreon segment that Peter and I have with, drumroll, Rod Roddenberry, the son of Gene Roddenberry, who is absolutely wonderful to us, that actually is out on our Patreon as we were recording this, and you'll see it on our YouTube channel at the end of this week, if you're listening to this when it comes out. Rod was absolutely terrific, but I always love hearing those stories. You could tell they had a very special relationship, and he was, Gene took me under his wing, and he talked to me about his vision and everything that Star Trek meant to him, and how he was positing it towards the survival of humanity and how he can improve. And so, just to wrap it up, pretty darn silly. And this is, when we get a little further down the road and we're wrapping up Deep Space Nine, which will be the next segment 2 show that we take on. There's a great documentary about that Todd and I, or that Peter and I will talk about, called What You'd Leave Behind, that came out several years ago. And then by the time we get to the end of Voyager, a little birdie told us, and this is not an interview that's been out yet, that long promised documentary should hopefully be out by later this year. We're really, really hoping. And if not, if it comes out next year, we'll talk about it next year, but we definitely want to do it. So, Peter, any final thoughts about this?
About this final, the Journey's End? Not anything new. There was like a couple sneak peeks of Generations that were kind of fun, like the behind the scenes shot of William Shatner doing the Take Us Out.
Right.
That was kind of entertaining. But that was like it. We saw that, and we saw stellar cartography.
Right, exactly.
That was all we saw from Generations.
And then he had, I think he also had a sketch of the observatory. It's like, that was
they showed the observatory,
quasi inconsequential part of the movie. I mean, not even just that little bit of it. So, well, cool. Yeah. Well, we closed the door on regularly talking about TNG. It will come up again in random episodes, randomly selected episodes in segment 1 of the show as we go down the road. And we will revisit it and other things that we have planned probably in the next year or so. So we're not leaving TNG forever, but this is the first show that we've really wrapped up that had a real ending of sorts, even though it went right into the movies. But it was a show that ended when it was supposed to end, maybe a little further past where it was supposed to end. But regardless, that's the show. Thanks for joining us. Big reminder, we are off during the next scheduled episode. I'm going on vacation. My wife and I are going to Michigan's Upper Peninsula, which, if you're familiar with the Midwest, is a charming, magical place, but we're going to be gone for a week. But when we return, Strange New Worlds will be out, and we have this great slate of a lot of our recurring guest stars that are going to be joining us, and a couple of new people too, that are names that you might recognize in the Star Trek podcasting world. So I'm really psyched about that. Really looking forward to it. So enjoy yourself. Stay cool out there, and keep enjoying Trek until we get back. But Peter, where do people find you out there?
You can find me around the interwebs, most social platforms, at Petrus Aquinas. I'm not super active, but if you poke me, I might say something. You can find me primarily on our Discords. Other than that, you can find me on ELH's Twitch and YouTube channel, where I'm playing a Temerian chief engineer. And you can also find me behind the scenes on Starship Excelsior.
Excellent. Good deal. And I can be found on kind of the social media big three as far as I see it. That would be Threads, Blue Sky, and Instagram. I am at the C3, TheCeeThree. But again, I'm on our Discords all the time. That's where we're having chats about all kinds of pop culture. So find us there. If you don't find us, ping one of us a note, and we will add you because we would love to have you on board. But with that, we draw things to a close. I'm going to tell you, as always, that sharing is caring, and to keep on trekking.
Peace and long life.
This podcast is part of the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and podcast services around the galaxy, as well as video on our YouTube channel. You can support Secret Friends Unite by becoming a Patreon member, get bonus programs and more over at patreon.com/secretfriendsunite. Join our Discord community for even more discussions on all things geek. For all the latest updates on Secret Friends Unite, make sure to follow us on Threads at secret.friends.unite and visit secretfriendsunite.com. Find our merchandise at TeePublic and Redbubble. Thanks for listening, and may the Force live long and prosper.